Okay, this video is for Algebra 1. We're covering the first section of Chapter 5. I'm going to go ahead and move on into the definitions. Past the lesson. I feel like the lesson opener, y'all probably have that just fine. Okay, so for section 5.1, an ordered pair is what we call the pair of numbers that describe a point on the Cartesian coordinate plane. This is the form they use, which we'll discuss in just a minute. The two symbols in an ordered pair are called the coordinates, whether they're numbers or letters or terms of some kind. All right, so the Cartesian coordinate plane is divided, so think of it as graph paper, right? So it's like number lines that run left and right, up and down, and then you can graph points in between the two. Each section is a quadrant. So this is quadrant 1. So if you think of these as like a left and right number line, an up and down number line. Quadrant 1, if the origin, we'll get to the definitions of these in a second, but the origin falls right there in the middle at 0, 0. So that's like the 0 point on a number line. Everything to the right of that number line is positive, and everything, if it's a vertical number line, everything up from that point is also positive. So you can think of this as positive, positive, if it's in the form, coordinate form, x and y. Then we move counterclockwise. So to the left of that, we have now negative x, but we're still above the x-axis and we're still up from the origin. So you have a positive y. Excuse me. So then we move again and we have quadrant 3 is negative, negative. Goodness, excuse me. So again, if it's in this quadrant, that means the first number is negative. So you've moved left from the origin. And the second number is negative, which means you've moved down from the origin. So negative, negative. Now, then we come to our last quadrant, as you can imagine, quadrant 4. Now we're back into positive x. We're to the right of the origin. However, we're still below the origin. So we've gone down. So that y is still negative. Okay, so let's talk about, I've already kind of called some of these names out, but let's talk about the parts here. The x-axis is the horizontal number line in the plane. The y-axis is your vertical number line. And then the origin, the only thing I really kind of labeled, is that point where the two axes intersect. Sorry, excuse me. All right, I'm going to go back really quick to my quadrants. So this is the origin right here in the middle. This is your x-axis. And then the up and down one, this is your y-axis. So we'll look at these again when we get into examples. All right, so moving on to when we actually are plotting points. So by plotting points, in the Cartesian plane, the horizontal distance always comes first and the vertical distance always comes second. And that's also what we use that. So we kind of move left to right when we plot points. So an ordered pair with unknown coordinates is usually expressed inside parentheses, x and y separated by a comma. Where what the x tells us if we move right, if it's positive, we move left if it's negative. The y is telling us that we move up if it's positive or down if it's negative. So again, that x part of the ordered pair is called the x coordinate and is the first coordinate of the ordered pair. It's also called the I can't say that, abscissa, I think. And then the y coordinate, that one is called the ordinate, and it's the second coordinate of the ordered pair. All right, so let's look at an example here. So in this case, we want to graph and label ordered pairs. When we actually plot a point, by graphing it, that's putting the point where it goes, the little dot, but labeling it is just as important. When you don't have a name for that point, then you have to use the ordered pair to show the coordinate. So we graph and label any plotted point. Okay, so our first one, A, is 2 and 1. So the 2, again, I start at my origin. The 2 tells me, because it's positive, I'm going to move right, 1, 2. And the 1 is positive, so that tells me I move up. So that means that my point falls at coordinate 2, 1, which makes sense. It's in the quadrant 1, which is positive, positive. So if I have a positive x and a positive y, it better fall in this top right corner. Clean that up. That's messy. Okay, and so my second point, -3, 4. So the -3, again, start at your origin. We move left or right. The negative tells me I'm moving left. So 1, 2, 3. And the 4, positive 4, tells me I'm moving up. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here is my second point. And we would put the coordinate -3, 4. So the coordinates go there. The last one, I'm going to clean this up. The 0 for the x tells me that I do not move left or right from my origin. I'm going to stay right here at the origin. But then, so then I move to -5, and that tells me I'm moving down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that point falls at 0, 0, -5. So I have to put the point, that's the graph, and then I have to label it, that's the coordinates. And so now we have our 3 points labeled. So you'll notice if your x is 0, then your point is going to fall on the y-axis. If we're going to see this one, actually, we'll see it in another example. But if the y is 0, then it falls on the x-axis because it's not going to move up or down from that x-axis. So we'll get to that in a second. All right, so this is the steps I just followed. I wanted to make sure you had them in your notes. When you plot points, you always move x units right or left from the origin. Start at the origin, go left or right, depending on whether it's positive or negative. Then from that position, once you've moved left or right, then you go up or down based on the y units, whether they're positive or negative and how many they are. Once you've done both of those things, the point that you end up at, that's where you graph your point and then label it. All right, so example 2. So in this case, we have named our points. So remember way back when, points on a number line, or if they've got a label, it's a capital letter. In this case, we have D, E, and F. So that's what we're going to put when we have to label our point. And for this example as well, we need to state which quadrant it falls into. Now, so I'm just going to go ahead and follow my steps. Again, start at the origin. The -1 tells me that I move left 1. The -2 tells me I move down 2. And so I have this point here is point D. I don't have to put the coordinates. I put the label that it already was given, its name. For E, I have -3, so I'm still moving left from my origin. So back to the origin, left, 1, 2, 3. The 5 is positive, so I go up from there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here is my point E. And then for F, so this is the example it's talking about. If your y is 0, again, we'll see it when we get to there, but the 4 tells me I'm moving right 4 because it's positive, 1, 2, 3, 4. But because my y is 0, I'm not going to go up or down. So if the y is 0, it always falls on the x-axis. And this is point F. So going back, point D is in quadrant 3. E is in quadrant 2. And F is falling on the x-axis. So if it's, there goes my internet. Okay, if it falls on one of the axes, either X or Y, then it is not in a quadrant. It's on the boundary of a quadrant, which is your X or Y axis. All right, so the last part of this is we're going to talk about scatter plots. So a scatter plot, name will make sense when we graph it, is a graph on a Cartesian plane that summarizes the relationships between two sets of numbers. Should make this a little smaller. Okay, on the next slide, we have our example. So example 3, make a scatter plot of the heights and weights of students as recorded in the following table. Then describe the relationship between the variables. So you can think of each of these. So in this case, height is more independent of weight. Weight's more dependent on height. So you have height as your X, weight as your Y. So you can think of these each as their own ordered pairs. This one's like 64, 130. Each one of these is their own ordered pair. So let's give myself some room here. First, we need to define the parameters of our scatter plot. So in this case, we're not going to have our origin in the middle. We're going to sort of think of our origin as kind of right here in the bottom left corner. Again, the left and right is our x-axis. So this is where my height is going to go. The y is the up and down. So this is weight. Sorry, I can't, if I put my hand on it, it's going to like jump all over the place. So see, just like that. I can't do it. Wait. Oh, give myself some room. Okay, weight in pounds. All right, so now we have to figure out what our range is going to be. I'm not going to start at 0 because that doesn't really make any sense because all these numbers are pretty large. It looks like for height, our smallest is 58. So we would start at the second point. I'm going to put that at 58. And then it goes up to, looks like 64 is my highest. So 58, I'm going to skip every other one because I'm a bit, my writing is a bit big here. 58, 60, 62, 63, oh, nope, 64, 66, 68. We'll do that. I probably could space it out a little bit more, but that's close enough. Okay, so weight, looks like my lowest is 98, and I've got 145, 145. So we need to go from 98 to 145. I'm just gonna start with 80. So I'll start 80 pounds. Wonder 90, 100, 10, 20, 30. Nope, that won't quite fit. So we'll just do every other one. 100, 120, 140, 160, 80. It's my highest. Yeah, that's as far as I need to go. Okay, so let me erase that point. That's not on our scatter plot. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and graph these. So I'm just going to start on the left and go right. So 64, if my height is 64 and my weight is 130, I'm going to move to the left till I get to 64 right here. Don't put a dot there. And then go up to 130. So 80, 90, 100, 10, 20, 30. So right here. Now with a scatter plot, you're not labeling every point. That'll be way too messy. Just put your points on there. Okay, so height is 60. We go 124. So I'm going to go somewhere in between the 120 and 130. So 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, and then somewhere about right here. Okay, so height of 62. So find 62 and then 138. So I'm going to go up to 140 and then come down just a smidge, a little bit under the 149. Where are we? 58, back to 58 and then 98. So almost 100. So 58, I'm going to go to 100 and then come down just a little underneath it. 63. So right here between 62 and 64, and then up to 160, and then just a little underneath it. So where's 60, just underneath it is the 159. 61, and they weigh 136 pounds. So pretty close in between 130 and 140, maybe a little higher than the middle, but that'll work. 61, 62. So we're back to 62. This one is 142. So that one's going to be a little above the 140 at 60 and 126. So this one, what was the other one at 60? 124. I'll put that too close. Put that one a little bit below the middle mark and the 126 a little above the middle mark. But they're very close. And that was 60. So next one, 59, down to the left one, and then 101. So go to 100, and then just a smidge over. And then for 62, got another 62, 145. So that one is a little bit above the other two. All right, so now we have created our scatter plot. Oops, excuse me. Okay, so when we look at this, we need to see how does it look when we see it as one plot? Well, what I'm seeing, obviously there's a big jump there in the middle, but I'm seeing that as the height increases, the weight also increases. So our conclusion here, so as height increases, weight also increases. So scatter plots are used to look at data and see the relationship between two different variables and how one might affect the other. Typically, you're looking at how your x coordinate height affects weight. And so we always, when you document the results of a scatter plot, you always look at your x. So as x changes, y changes. So we would not say as their weight increases, their height increases. It's as their height increases, their weight increases. So you always look how x changes y, I guess, to some extent. How does x change y? So we always communicate it in that way. And I will talk about why we do it that way in the next section. So you do have a homework assignment. So go ahead and kind of look at those and start practicing plotting points on the Cartesian coordinate plane. And I will have another video covering section 5.2. Thank you very much.